From insane world battles to one that set the stage for the world to come. Stay tuned to number 1 to find out the most important battles ever fought. Number 10. The Siege of Orleans. Sieges, in the ancient world, were one of the most common forms of combat. And in regards to France, one of their most important victories in their history was at the Siege of Orleans. But it wasn't them giving the siege, it was the English, and the English were winning. In fact, they had been doing this siege for 6 months, and the English were doing very well, including taking the Loire River. The French were losing hope, and that's when Joan of Arc arrived. Oh yeah, that Joan of Arc. The legendary warrior who heard the voice of God and rallied the French people to countless victories. But it was here that her legend was truly made, for she entered the city and then rallied the people to her cause. Not just that though, she used her brilliant tactical mind to great effect to retake the Loire River banks, and through her leadership, the French were able to beat back England quite decisively. Not only did this help establish Joan of Arc as a legendary figure of history, many agree that without this victory, France would have been under English rule for some time. Number 9. Stalingrad. At the beginning of World War II, 2 of the most powerful men in history were Adolf Hitler and Joseph Stalin. They had 2 of the most powerful nations in the world, and so they teamed up in World War II. But Stalin more or less just agreed not to do anything to stop Hitler's advances as long as he didn't go into Russian territory. Hitler agreed for a time, but then he decided to strike out at Stalin, paranoid that he would betray him. The Germans marched right into Russia and started to take all the land that they could, and Stalin let them. But then they hit Stalingrad. This battle went from August 1942 to February 1943, all during the cold Russian winter. Hitler's forces had better weapons, more manpower, and tanks. But in Russia, if you're not prepared for the conditions, you won't last. And although they did last an impressive 6 months, it cost them dearly. The cold was crippling them and they were running out of supplies. But Hitler refused to let them surrender. Eventually, though, they slowly did surrender one by one. The Battle of Stalingrad was actually the biggest confrontation in World War II. Bigger than D-Day, Bastogne, and everything in between. It was the true beginning of the end for Hitler because now he was fighting a war on 2 fronts and he would lose, all because he broke his promise to Stalin. Number 8. Gettysburg. Before we talk about this bloody battle, take a moment to like this video and join the Zero to Hero community by using the buttons below. The American Civil War was the bloodiest war on American soil. It was the battle of brothers, of family, and friends as the North and South came together in a conflict that would reshape the nation in more ways than one. The Confederate Army seemed to have the advantage for much of the war, and then a single battle helped turn the tide. Gettysburg. You see, the Confederate Army were on a roll. They were led by General Robert E. Lee, one of the greatest generals in history, and he got them several victories. But when they went to Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, that's when his momentum stopped. This 3-day battle was long and hard, and the South won the first day of fighting. But the second day turned the tide, and the third day secured victory for the Union. This battle gave hope to the North and was further made historical because of President Abraham Lincoln's now famous Gettysburg Address. Number 7. The Battle of Trafalgar. Let's head to the ocean, shall we? Many battles have been fought on the water, but during the Napoleonic Wars, these battles were all the more vital. And with Napoleon's forces seemingly unstoppable, the British needed a win to help get them back on track. That victory was the Battle of Trafalgar. The irony here is that the French and Spanish forces actually outnumbered the British, but Admiral Horatio Nelson did not care. So on October 21st, 1805, he went and rushed right in with his ships, and quite confoundingly, they won. Although Horatio did lose his life in the battle, his sacrifice would help lead to the downfall of Napoleon soon thereafter. Number 6. The Battle of Hastings. England is a nation that is known throughout the world for its importance in history. But when it comes to its own history, you could argue that it didn't technically start until 1066, for it was in that year that the Battle of Hastings was fought. That year, William the Conqueror took the fight to the Anglo-Saxons and through luck, will, and trickery, he slowly defeated them. The battle was so intense and chaotic that it was said that William had actually passed away during the fight. But then he went to the battlefield himself, rallied his troops, and launched them into the final phase of the battle, which led to his victory and his anointment as King William I. Through his rule, England became an independent and established nation, one that remains to this day, and it all truly began in the Battle of Hastings. Number 5. D-Day. World War II was the sequel no one wanted, and yet it happened. And it was a war that no one would forget for many reasons, not the least of which was that the Axis powers of Germany, Italy, Russia, before defecting to the Allies, and Japan had an iron grip on much of the world. The Allies were all but gone save for the United Kingdom, and they were in the crosshairs of the Axis powers. It was only a matter of time before things fell. But in 1941, the United States entered the fray. Now, that didn't turn the tide as much as history would lead you to believe. For although the US went into Africa and was victorious, breaching Europe was much more difficult. But on June 6, 1944, D-Day happened. A coalition of the US, UK, Canadian, and other Allied soldiers stormed the beaches of Normandy, France. 5 beaches in total, and they fought tooth and nail to secure the beaches so that they could get a foothold in France. Behind the scenes, the Allies worked hard to divert the Axis powers away from Normandy so that only the minimal enemy forces would be there. And although they succeeded, the enemy resistance was still great. It wasn't enough to stop the Allies, though. They broke through, and they got their foothold in Europe, and in less than a year, the Germans and Italians surrendered. Russia defected to the Allies, and Japan was taken down months after the German surrender. World War II was over, but none of that would have happened like it did without D-Day. Number 4. Divine Wind. The Mongol Empire was one of the greatest empires of all time, and they had conquered just about everything that they felt that they could. Whether under the legendary Genghis Khan or his grandson Kublai, their reign was great. But they had one kryptonite, as it were, and its name was Japan. But more accurately, it was Japan's weather. You see, to get to Japan, you had to sail. And Kublai Khan wanted that victory, so he sent a fleet out to invade Japan, who were repelled by the samurai that lived there. But then, when they tried to retreat, a typhoon, also known to them as a divine wind, sank all their boats, costing the Mongol Empire greatly. But Kublai didn't give up, so he made another fleet and army, and 7 years later tried to invade Japan again. Japan predicted this attack and made sure that the ships couldn't dock. When the Mongols figured this out, they tried to remain out on the sea, only to get taken down by the divine wind once more. Number 3. Waterloo. When you hear about the great conquerors of our world, you no doubt hear about a little man named Napoleon. Unlike Joan of Arc, Napoleon was a ruthless leader and dominated nations with his guile, tactics, and brute force. He conquered much of Europe during his time, and most of the world hated him for it, especially after he was defeated and exiled, and then returned not long after to take back everything that he had lost. But when the nations of Britain, Prussia, Austria, and Russia heard about what Napoleon had done, they had had enough. They each brought in hundreds of thousands of troops to take down Napoleon once and for all. The battles were long and hard, but at a place called Waterloo, they got their day in the sun. The battle at Waterloo had 45,000 meet their demise all in one day. But Napoleon knew that he was finished this time around. He surrendered, abdicated the French crown, and once again went into exile, where he stayed until his passing in 1821. The irony here was that Napoleon's reign was the last great age for France. Ever since that point, France never regained their grandeur or status, which was proven in both world wars where France was forced to surrender to enemy nations. Number 2. Yorktown. The Revolutionary War was one that changed history as we knew it forever, as it gave rise to the United States, but it was far from a simple endeavor. It was years of close calls, unbelievable luck, and even getting the French to help fight the British. But in the end, everything came together in the Battle of Yorktown, Virginia, October of 1871. Commander George Washington saw the pieces coming together. The British were retreating. The colonies had become a better fighting force, and the French were helping to pin them in. Yorktown was the final blow that led the colonies, and the French, to victory. The battle itself was said to be boring, but that's not the point here. The British General Cornwallis surrendered to George Washington, and independence was truly won, and the land that would soon be the United States was truly born. Number 1. The Battle of Thermopylae. There have been many epic battles throughout history, but few have had the impact and historical precedence that the Battle of Thermopylae had, also known as the Battle of the 300. Let me set the stage for you. Persia was dominating any land that they set their sights upon. King Xerxes I, however, had a desire to avenge an old score, and he wanted to conquer Greece, so he sent his armies upon the nation. In desperation, the Athenians turned to King Leonidas of Sparta to help lead a small army against them. He accepted and took 300 of his best Spartans, as well as a menagerie of other Greek soldiers that numbered around 10,000, and held the Persians at bay for 3 days, despite overwhelming odds against them. Only after the second day, when they were betrayed, which allowed the Persians to circle behind the Greeks and pin them in, did they fall. But why is this at the top of the list? Simple. Because of the shockwaves that rippled out because of this one fight. The Spartans and their allies lost the battle, but the city-states that would become Greece didn't. In fact, they endured, despite Athens being burned to the ground. For the first time in their history, they banded together fully and completely and took the fight to Persia, beating them and becoming their own nation. This led to the arrival of Alexander the Great, who expanded the Greek Empire to new heights and shaped the world in ways that are still felt to this day. But most importantly of all, the Greeks were a democracy. Persia wasn't. Because the Greeks survived the war and continued their ways, democracy spread throughout the world, including to many modern nations. So without this battle, without this heroic last stand, without the inspiration that came from this fight, the world would not be the same in any stretch of the imagination. What did you think was the most epic battle in history? Let us know in the comments below, and take care.